Did you know that analyzing data involves making calculations 50% of the time? Secondly, as you continue working with large blocks of data, these calculations may become a little bit confusing. However, on the other side, we know that we can use these formulas and functions to solve real-life data analysis problems with a little bit of planning and understanding of basic math. Now, in this lesson, we're going to be learning how Excel processes calculations, differentiate between a formula and a function, as well as write our very first formula using the correct syntax. Let's go. In this particular session, our goal is to introduce everyone to Excel formulas and functions. Now, a formula in Excel is any mathematical equation that is determined by you who is using Excel, and it can be made up of values or mathematical data that is stored within a workbook that you might be working with, okay? So a formula, in other words, doesn't need to have a function in it. Of course, we haven't understood what a function is, but in the workbook that I did share with you, we did define this. As a function is a predefined formula that is executed using mandatory values that we call arguments. But again, when you choose to work with a function, it means that you have agreed to work with its predefined arguments. It works with a set of conditions. If you don't apply those arguments, the function will not work in your favor. But for a formula, you can do your own custom calculations the way how you want, okay? Now, let's understand the important parts of an Excel function formula first before we actually start writing them. I think that would really make sense, okay? We shall take the example of this formula that you're seeing on your screen. So this is what we call an Excel function formula, because this particular calculation involves a function called sum. Now let us go through some of the main parts of a function formula. The first one, of course, we all agree that it should be starting with an equals symbol. So that's what we called the operator. Now, the other important part of any function formula is the function name itself. If you're going to be using VLOOKUP just as an example, you make sure that you say equals VLOOKUP. If you're going to be using sum, you say equals sum. If it is any other function, as we shall be going through some of them, you have to declare the function name. Now, the other next part that we need to talk about is the open brackets. If you miss any of these items that we are listing, please be assured that your formula will not work. The other important part of this particular function that you need to take care of is commas. These commas here are the ones that separate between the function's arguments. So make sure that you're not forgetting the commas. These are separators for each individual argument. Now, the other segment that you don't need to miss is the function's arguments themselves. Each individual function will have their own arguments predefined for you. If they say, please, on the first argument, provide me with this. On the second argument, provide me with this. The third argument, give me this. You have to give in that order. And one thing that you don't need to miss is the closing bracket. So in most cases, this is how our functions require us to work with them. Equals symbol, function name, I don't care which function you're going to be using, open parentheses or open brackets, give your functions arguments, separate them with commas, and close your brackets and hit enter key on the keyboard. You'll see your numbers popping up or whatever you might be doing. So follow that order. Now let's end off this particular presentation and head over to Excel. I believe everyone got this particular file, which I actually shared yesterday. Now, let us demonstrate this practically. I have this simple data set with me, and I have student names and their weight. Now, for example, our task here is to calculate the total weight for Musa and Derek. We can either use a function or we can just write our plain formula. And together, let's go with the formula first. I can say equals, and then I head over to Musa's weight like so, and I'll say plus. So plus will come in here as a symbol for adding up things. I can also point over to Derek's number here. This is a formula that I've written, but it has no any specified function in it. However, when I hit enter key, it will still give me the same value. Now, I can also achieve this particular same number using a function. And one of the functions that I can use is the sum, because we know that the sum function has been dedicated to summing up numbers in Excel. So I can say equals sum, I open brackets. You can see this is a screen tip that I have here for the function, and it is asking for numbers here. Give me the numbers that you'd like me to add for you. So I start giving the numbers. The first one is Musa's weight. And I can say comma, because that is the first argument. And I can also give Derek's weight, like so. And once I close off this particular formula, I can hit enter key on the keyboard. This is the same formula, but it involves a function called sum. And this is a formula that is also adding up those two numbers. Similarly, we can do multiplication. We can do division. What else can we do? Can someone tell us? All right, but let us calculate the difference here. The difference between James's weight and Godfrey's weight. Okay, I will say equals James's weight minus Godfrey's weight, because we are looking for the difference. And when I hit enter, I get 31. If you're going to be using a function here to do the same operation to find the difference, we use something called insert function. When you check on the formulas tab here, on the formula bar, you'll see some symbol here, which we call the insert function. Similarly, if we don't do it from here, we can go to the formulas tab, and you see this symbol here called the insert function. The shortcut is Shift F3. Shift F3. Let me do that. Shift F3. When I do that, it opens the insert function dialog box. But similarly, if you are not a shortcut person, please come over to the formula bar. Just next to the formula bar right here, you see the FX symbol, and it will tell you insert function. Click on it once. Once you do that, and this dialog box launches, but the first step you do is make sure that you clicked in the cell where you want to populate your value, and then come back to the insert function. And in here, you can ask for help. For example, I'm not aware of the function that will help me do that. So what I do, I type here difference between numbers. I'm just hopeful that this statement can guide Excel to give me or to propose to me the functions. So when I do that and say go, you see what it does? It gives me this particular function here, sum x2my2. Let me check what this one does. Sums the difference between the squares of two corresponding ranges. Will this one work? I'm not very sure. So I can change the phrase here. For example, if I want to add numbers, I can say add numbers. I can say add numbers and then say go. This one will give me suggestion of the form of the functions that I need to use to add up numbers. So I might find one here. I can either go for sum, IM sum, D sum. All these ones can be used to sum up things.
Subtract numbers. Subtract numbers.
Yeah, I say subtract numbers.
Subtract numbers.
Let us try that one. You know, these things, they are practical. There's no way you can cram them. Aha, you see? Now, I've just typed here subtract numbers, and it has suggested to me one of the functions here. I need to read before I accept this suggestion. I need to read, what does the IM sub function do? Returns the difference of two complex numbers. And I believe that's what we are looking for. If I am comfortable with this particular function, I'll just say, okay. Once I do that, it will launch into the function arguments. So what I need to do is to give the numbers here. I will actually point to the first number, which is James's weight in cell I8. And the second number, I can go to Godfrey's weight, like so. This is the number that we gave, which is 88. The number 2 was 57, and the probable answer that is supposed to come out is 31. We can see it from here. Okay, I believe for people who are beginners to writing formulas, please make use of the insert function dialog box. Let's say okay and see what we get. We get 31, but again we get this one as text. So we know what to do to convert this one back into a number. If you don't know, we shall find out as we move forward. These particular functions that we have written here, or formulas, we have both static and dynamic formulas. What do we mean when we say dynamic and static? For example, you can see these two numbers here. We have actually calculated this particular simple subtraction between the value in C2 and the value in B2. And this is the value that we are getting here. So this is an example of a dynamic formula. Why is it so dynamic? It's because we have used cell references. Now together, we have not hard coded like it is here, because this one is the opposite. This is static, because if these numbers changed tomorrow, this particular number will not update. If a value changed here, for example, this one becomes 900, just as an example, you can see this one becomes 650, but this one, if we changed it to 900, it will not change here, because this is a static formula and this is a dynamic one. You can see equals 750 minus, if I want this number to recalculate, I have to come into the formula bar and change. Are we together? I change it to 900 inside the formula bar. That's when I get this value to update. Otherwise, the best approach is dynamic formulas. Similarly, we can create a chain of calculations here. For example, you can see the numbers that we have B2 and C2. We have had this particular simple calculation, which is C2 minus B2, which is dynamic. And again, we have had another formula here, which is actually multiplying the result of these two numbers together to give this particular final value that we are seeing here. So anything that changes in any of these cell addresses will affect what we get here. You can test that one. If this one changes to 900, let us see what happens. This one updates and this one updates. Let's move forward. We talked about the operators. Yes, these operators here, the division, the multiplication, the addition symbol, and the minus. So these are the symbols that we shall use a lot to indicate mathematical actions in Excel. They are known as operators. But again, I didn't mention that we also have another set of operators or logical operators, the greater than, the less than, the does not equal. All those are also operators in their own way because we use them inside logical functions. But these are the operators that you will work with if you're going to be writing regular formulas. Now, there's something we call the order of precedence. When formulas are calculating, they follow a certain sequence, which we call the order of precedence. Whenever they are processing your formula, whichever symbol that you have inside that particular formula, whether it's a division, whether it's a multiplication symbol, whether it's a minus symbol, there is a way how Excel treats that particular symbol. For example, division and multiplication symbols are processed before the subtraction. And I have given the hierarchy here, what we call the order of precedence. In other words, Excel treats some symbols with greater significance. However, we can overturn that. We can overturn that behavior by introducing what we call parentheses or brackets. If you introduce brackets inside your formula, you're simply redirecting how Excel should calculate your numbers. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then it will follow the order of precedence, which is right here. And I've given an example here. You have a formula that adds up 2 and 3 and then multiplies by a 4. That's what you want. Essentially, you want to say 2 plus 3, which is a 5, times 4. When we do that in here, I will try it. I'll say equals 2 plus 3 times 4. When I hit enter key, what do I get? Remember, we all know this particular simple calculation, what it should be yielding. But before we actually hit enter, can someone tell us what is the correct answer? What should this particular calculation yield? 2 plus 3 is a 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Okay. But surprisingly, when I hit enter, I get 14. Why? It's the same thing that we have just talked about, the order of precedence. So what happens is that it will actually first work out the multiplication because it's given higher priority. So if you want to overturn what is happening here, then you introduce your brackets. So the brackets is like a customizer. So if I want to override this 14 here that is coming out, I can come here and wrap these first two numbers into open and close parentheses.
All right, now let me assume that you're getting an understanding of how Excel processes most of the calculations in Excel. Now next session, we're going to be introducing ourselves to cell referencing. And once you master these three cell referencing styles that Excel uses, you'll be good to start working with complex calculations in Excel. So watch the video that is showing on your screen right now. Let's meet there. Bye-bye.